Hi, everybody. This is John Schuppe. I'm a reporter for NBC News Digital, and I'm here to talk to you and answer any questions you might have about a story that we published last week under my byline called "We Are Going Backward: How the Justice System Ignores Science in the Pursuit of Convictions," the link for which you can find in our status. And please go ahead and read it. And for those of you who have, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story itself. We set about a couple of months ago seeking to figure out what has happened in the 10 years since a bunch of the nation's independent scientists from the National Academy of Sciences sounded an alarm out about the scientific validity and underpinning of various forensic science techniques, things that we've all come to understand or believe we understand by watching shows like CSI, in which forensic science is done very easily and quickly within a half an hour, and the crime is solved. And the scientists sounded the alarm in a way that said a lot of these things do not stand up to proper scientific scrutiny. So in other words, the science in forensic science wasn't necessarily accurate. And so we went about trying to see what has happened since that alarm was raised. And the answer, in short, if you read the story, is not a lot. There have been some small incremental steps to improve the way various forensic science techniques are used. There have been a lot of media reporting and a couple of additional reports talking about particular troublesome techniques such as bite marks and blood spatter. But by and large, all these methods are admissible in court in America. And in addition to kind of going over that process of slow to no progress in the courtrooms, we also highlighted some stories, one involving bite mark evidence, another involving blood spatter evidence, and a third finally involving shoe print comparisons. And we included some what I think are pretty cool graphics. This is an example printed out on how bite marks are done. If you go to the story, and the link is in our status, you can look at these techniques, these graphics explaining how some of these techniques are used for yourselves and learn a little bit more about it. And with that introduction, I'm open to any stories you might, questions about any questions you have about the story. I'm happy to answer. This is what I'm here for. This is public service journalism. We want people to understand better how the criminal justice system in America works, and this story is a part of that.
So, Schuppe, what are some examples of forensic methods that have been disproven over the years?
Some of the examples, ones that have been disproven, there are a few. Some didn't come up on our story because they're already rendered obsolete. Something called microscopic hair comparison, which was the subject of a significant scandal at the FBI when the FBI realized that more than 90% of its conclusions about microscopic hair examinations were false. There's also, as we mentioned in our story, bite mark evidence has come under increasing scientific scrutiny in a lot of places, fallen out of favor, the biggest example being Texas. A murder conviction was recently thrown out because of the lack of confidence in bite mark evidence last month. And blood spatter, as I mentioned, is another one that's becoming newly scrutinized because forensic examiners with blood spatter specialties often overstate, according to critics, what blood spattered on a wall, say, or at a crime scene can say about what actually happened.
Helga wants to know if you think that shows like CSI are giving us the wrong picture of science and facts needed to prove that someone committed these crimes.
Well, Helga, thanks for that question. The answer is, in short, yes. Especially researchers and scientists and experts in the forensic science field believe that is one of the problems from a society we suffer from now, is because we watch these shows and see the actors playing forensic examiners solving these crimes within 28 minutes, a half an hour, And then a lot of us go sit on juries where we expect the same. And it isn't that cut and dried in real life. And that's what a lot of scientists and critics of the way forensic science is used in the courtrooms today, that's what they say, is that we as citizens expect too much from what is actually scientifically limited examinations.
Do you think this is affecting minority groups more than others?
There haven't been, to my knowledge, any studies that examine the racial breakdown of how forensic science is used. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of evidence of racial bias in many aspects of the criminal justice system, and cases are affected that way. However, the use of forensic science and comparing it to outcomes racially, I'm not aware of any studies that actually prove or disprove that.
Someone wants to know if you can elaborate a little bit more on the bite marks and how kind of go through that chart a little bit.
How it works?
Yeah.
So bite marks have been used for several decades, since I believe the 1970s. It was a growing field. It's called technically forensic odontology. It's basically dentists who use the indentations left from people's mouths to try to identify who they are. There's two branches of this. There's a branch that seeks to identify people who have been found dead but unidentified. That's the whole aspect that you read a lot about, dental records being used to identify somebody who is missing. The other aspect is that what we talk about in the story is bite mark evidence, say, in a murder, and it works like this, very basically. A murder victim is found. There are marks on the person's body. A forensic odontologist is brought in to decide whether that mark is a bite mark. That alone is a subject of a lot of debate of whether that can be done. And then the examiner then takes a photograph of the indentation on the murder victim's skin, makes a cast of it, and then compares the photograph and the casting to teeth of people who are suspected of committing the murder. We focus on a case, for example, in Pennsylvania that's still ongoing, in which 5 people had their cast of their actual teeth taken, and a forensic odontologist compared the markings from a murder victim to that and zeroed in on one person. And that person's conviction has been overturned, and he's facing a retrial. And as time goes on and technology gets better, these techniques are involved not just comparing something side to side, but also trying to do what they call overlays on a computer to see if there is a comparison made there.
Has anyone been exonerated as a result of these findings?
There have been, put it this way, there's an organization called the National Registry of Exonerations. And I note this statistic in our story. It has documented 553 cases since 1989 in which forensic evidence of some sort has failed that person and they have been subsequently exonerated. In other words, it could be bad forensic science, but it also could be a bad forensic examiner doing his or her job wrong, or it could be some sort of some version of it being used incorrectly. So that's a good chunk, maybe 40% of all exonerations in the country. So, and even that number is considered conservative because we really don't know the full extent of exonerations out there, and people who are in prison who may not have done the crime that they are convicted of, but just have not been exonerated.
Are things changing? Is there any movement in trying to fix this?
Yeah, there's been efforts, and this is part of what we address in the story, which you, by the way, I'll just plug it again. You can go in our status bar and click on the link. That, first of all, we talk about in the story, after the initial National Academy of Sciences report that sounded the alarm 10 years ago next month, there have been various sort of Washington bureaucratic efforts to change things, but everything has been voluntary. reformers wanted Congress to create an independent agency of the federal government to oversee forensic science, and that never went anywhere. So there's been this sounding the alarm and lack of actual definitive reform at the federal level. But within some disciplines, there has been some effort to change from within. And the best example of that is fingerprint. What I find most interesting about fingerprinting is everyone assumes, and most time it is, that fingerprints are reliable. We've been doing it forever. We all know about it from the CSI shows, but it is limited as well. It does have its flaws. And it mostly has to do with the way that fingerprint examiners take the stand and describe how definite they are that this fingerprint belongs to this person. And because of some of the scientific reports that have come out over the past 10 years and even before that, some examiners have taken upon themselves to be more cautious and deliberate in the way that they describe it. So there's been some internal reforms, but in terms of a centralized national actual rewriting of standards, that has not happened yet. If there are no other questions, I just wanted to thank everybody for reading and asking questions and showing interest in this. Please stay tuned to our continuing coverage of this. And again, click on the link in our status bar, and I appreciate your time, and keep reading.